Yanis Varoufakis is a Greek academic, economist, and politician. He served as the Greek Minister of Finance in the first half of 2015. He's currently professor of economics at the University of Athens. Varoufakis is in the U.S. now to share his latest book, just translated into English. It's titled Talking to My Daughter About the Economy. And in it, he uses plain language to explain how we developed market societies over centuries, as well as its byproduct, inequality. The book also brings to light the sobering fact that it is our children who will deal with the outcomes of our choices. I really like that this is a book talking to your daughter. Where do you start talking about the state of things in 2018?
The youngsters are very sophisticated and very impatient at the same time. So if you try to talk to them about 2018, they're not that interested, because they're far more interested in how we came to where we are. So they're historically minded, even though they don't realize it. Every discussion ends up being a historical discussion, as it should be. As it should be.
You are an economist,
guilty as charged,
among other things,
yes.
And you speak a lot about debt, which isn't terribly shocking, coming from someone who is a Minister of Finance in Greece. but debt for you is not just something experienced in Greece. It is an international problem.
Well, it's not just a problem, it's a condition. If you think of it in terms of obligations, of reciprocity, ever since we merged as a sentient being or species, humanity has managed to survive through reciprocity, through helping one another, through collaboration. Well, collaboration and reciprocity means I do something for you today, and you do something for me tomorrow. In other words, I have an obligation, I have a debt towards you. But at some point that obligation became quantified, became legalized, it became a financial transaction. The way that it transformed itself, the way it was weaponized under capitalism and brought down Lehman Brothers and financialized, globalized world capitalism in 2008. This is a fascinating, if you want, connecting thread.
Are you suggesting we live without debt or without money?
Absolutely. Money is something that we need at a very primitive stage of our development as a species.
How would that work?
Well, we don't know yet, but come to think of it, here in Boston, in Europe, in the early 19th century, when some mad people got together to form the anti-slavery movement, that's the question that they faced. People who said to me, how would it work? The fact that there had never been a society without slaves didn't mean that we couldn't have one.
One of the things that this debt leads to is a great deal of inequality. You talk about one of the solutions for this, something I think you called democratizing the workplace. How would that work?
Well, inequality is a symptom. It's a symptom of the way we organize production and the distribution of the surplus that comes out of the production process. It has to do with ownership. Society is increasingly being divided between a small group of people that will end up owning everything.
Right. So how do you solve that?
Well, only through redistributing property rights over all those things that are necessary in order to produce our daily life.
The redistribution, I think, is part of the, I think what I read is the common ownership of these businesses. Is that right? Is that what the democratization is?
Well, let me give you an example. Take Google, for instance, right? Google's capital, which produces magnificent returns, it is produced socially. Today, every time you search on your Google search engine, you are contributing massively to Google's capital, and yet Google shareholders are the only ones who are collecting the returns to this. How about saying to the Googles of the world that, it's part of the legal framework that every time you issue shares, 30% of those shares have to go to a common wealth fund. So it's politics, and it better be democratic if we're going to have sustainability and legitimacy.
We keep using the word democratic. I'm going to ask you to define that. I mean, we're a democratic society.
No, we're not.
But we're not, right, but we're
not.
Europe is a democratic place, but it's not.
No, it's not. Europe and the United States were never set up as democracies. Read the Federalist Papers. It was all an attempt to make sure that the riffraff do not control governments. We hark back to the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta was not a democratic instrument. It was a charter of barons. It was all about their right to have slaves and not to be taxed by the king. Aristotle defined, I think, democracy very well, even though he was anti-democratic. He said it's a system of governance where the many, and therefore the poor, who are always in the majority, control government.
Is it possible to do that in a society that is as diverse as the United States and as Europe is becoming?
I hear in Europe very often people saying we cannot have a United States of Europe because we are very different, unlike the United States, which is a very homogeneous country. This country is not homogeneous at all.
Really?
What really binds you together to a very large extent is this country is, you know, a short document called the Constitution, and not so much, you know, the script or the text, but the process of putting it together. This is why, for instance, the political movement that I'm involved in Europe now is making a very big thing out of a constitutional process for drafting a constitution, not because I care so much about what it says, but because the process of bringing people together creates the polis, creates therefore the space for democratic. But let me just very briefly, if I can, answer your question, is it possible to have democracy? Allow me to answer this by saying that it is impossible for our sophisticated societies to become sustainable without democracy. Democracy is not a luxury.
That's good. I want to pick up on the movement that you're talking about. It's called DiEM25, Democracy in Europe 25, and that's 2025, is that?
Yes, that is correct.
So this is, I think you call it a manifesto, right?
It is a manifesto.
It is a manifesto.
It is the DiEM manifesto.
It's highly evocative. It sort of makes me think of a guy screaming from the mountaintop.
That's what the manifesto is meant
yes,
to be.
I understand. and you do a really good job. It seems improbable, I guess, is the basis of what I'm trying to say.
But you know, the preamble of the American Constitution is very improbable. What the manifesto does, it sets the scene. It creates the vision.
Are the people you need to talk to going to listen to this?
This is addressing the disenfranchised people of Europe. If you go to Europe today, what unites them is a sense of hopelessness, a sense that their democracies have been usurped, that their democratic rights mean absolutely nothing, that there is a process, a decision-making process, which combines authoritarianism with incompetence, and therefore you end up with a situation where the only ones who are really energized by the fragmentation and the constant economic, moral, political crisis are the fascists, the xenophobes, and the racists.
You had a wonderful article in The Guardian about the Communist Manifesto, and I'm embarrassed to say that I never read it. But I read your article. I haven't read the entire Communist Manifesto, but in America, it is kind of a Bible of a failed system, right? Because we equate it with, as you pointed out, the Soviet Union. But how do we get past that?
But it's amazing. I've never heard anyone denounce Adam Smith for what Lehman Brothers did. I never heard anyone denounce Jesus and his disciples over the Spanish Inquisition. I do not understand why Marx has to be held responsible for what Stalin did in his name. His criticism of capitalism was not that it was unjust. For him, capitalism was an inefficient, irrational system which effectively enslaved not just the workers but also the employers, the capitalists as well. So that's why...
So it wasn't that capitalism was unjust, it was that it was irrational.
If capitalism is unjust, it is because it is irrational. Marx, you know, spins in his grave when he hears these things, at thousands of revs per minute. Because the whole point of his analysis is that capitalism is a magnificent mode of production in the sense that it unleashes gigantic productive powers. But at the same time, those productive powers are shaping the world in a manner that is not sustainable.
What does your DiEM25 version of democracy look like? What is the difference?
Well, for a start, we believe that Democrats are the people who recognize that they don't have the answers individually, that we want to crowdsource answers.
I mean, coming from public radio, which is a often run by committee, it's hard to see how this works because things move so much slower.
As
messy.
Oscar Wilde used to say, he said this about socialism. Socialism will never happen because it takes too many long evenings.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do we have an alternative? No.
Speaking to American progressives, what do you tell them?
Oh, one thing, with great urgency. It's time to collaborate. It's time to join forces across the Atlantic. We must join forces across the Atlantic. This parochialism of the left, of progressives in the United States, is not too dissimilar to the parochialism of Donald Trump. The idea that you can have a progressive movement in the United States that is not linked to progressives in Europe, to progressives in Asia, to progressives in Latin America is detrimental to the chances of progressives in this country.
I understand your point is that there is a common goal for everyone, and that's to end the inequality, but it's so much easier to look at money as a common goal, right? How do you separate the nationalism?
The way to do it is by demonstrating to our own good people who are drawn by nationalism simply because they've lost hope from anywhere else, that nationalism is a very unsafe friend and offers in the end only hardship.
So there is talk of you running for Prime Minister. Is that a reality?
What is a reality is that I am now heading a new political party in Greece, which is created by DiEM. DiEM25 is a pan-European movement, but it is creating political parties in different countries. So we've created Mera25. Mera means DiEM in Greek. And since I am the secretary of the party, the leader of the party, when I'm being asked, are you the prime ministerial candidate, the answer is yes.
So what is your prediction for how well the DiEM movement parties do in the various countries?
I have no idea, because it's very early days. So I'm not interested in opinion polls. I don't give a damn about what will happen in the end. I'm just interested in waking up in the morning and doing things that are satisfactory.
If you look back at the way things have gone, can that give you a sign for what the future holds?
Let me answer your question retrospectively. If you had asked me in 2014, early 2014, when I lived by the way, in Austin, Texas, if you asked me, what are the chances that in 12 months you will be the finance minister of Greece, I would laugh at your face. I would say, what are you going on about? Have you gone berserk? So that's why I'm not interested in predictions.
Okay. Thank you so much, Yanis
Thank you.
Varoufakis. Pleasure.